Good afternoon, everyone. It is 3 o'clock on Wednesday, February 26th, and I'm going to call this meeting to order for the hearing examiner. And I changed up my opening statement on me. They do these things. It confuses me. For those that don't know, I'm an independent decision maker hired by the city of Boise and approved by city council. I make decisions on variances and administrative appeals. Any request to reconsider these decisions must be formally requested in writing pursuant to city code. And we only use a consent agenda to adopt findings related to previous decisions. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing, and the staff is going to describe that public hearing process in just a moment. Thank you all for attending tonight. For the record, I, Anna Canning, will be the hearing examiner rendering decisions tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Canning. So a few things just to start out with for tonight's proceeding. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the appellant and or applicant, and then to a representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association. This will be followed by questions from the hearing examiner, and after that we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then those who have signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then finally anyone who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. As a note, each speaker should state their name and address for the record, and each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time, and it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant or appellant is allowed time for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the hearing examiner will deliberate and render a decision. Back to you, Ms. Canning.
All right, our first item of business is to accept the minutes from our December 18th, 2024 hearing. I have reviewed those minutes and accept them for the record. All right, new business. We have a request to refer item CVA 2429, and I'll let Mr. Holmes give us a little bit of a brief background on that.
Thank you, Ms. Canning. Yes, this item was a variance to exceed the height maximum on 5.94 acres in a light industrial zone. The applicant did not post the site as required by code, and they did not also provide the required or requested information from the last hearing. So both the planning team and the applicant are requesting to defer this item to March 26th.
Okay. Is there anyone present wanting to testify regarding this application? All right, I see no hands raised. This item has been deferred to March 26, 2025. Our next item is CVA 2433, Noble Rock Development. Mr. Dennis.
Thank you, Ms. Canning, and good afternoon. The item before you is a variance request to deviate from the access and connectivity requirements to install detached sidewalk associated with a conditional use permit modification to a previously approved planned unit development on 0.33 acres in the R1C residential traditional zone located at 12685 West McMillan Road. Previously, under the Legacy Zoning Code, the applicant received approval for PUD 2319, which was comprised of a duplex and 2 detached single-family style dwellings. The applicant intends to modify the site layout of the DUP to attach 2 of the units for a 2 duplex style development. Under the Legacy Zoning Code, the existing 7-foot wide attached sidewalk was allowed to remain. However, the modern zoning code requires all new development within the R1C zone and adjacent to an arterial roadway, in this case, McMillan Road, to provide a 10-foot wide detached sidewalk. Additionally, a 10-foot wide landscape buffer would be required to accommodate street trees due to the presence of overhead power lines on the subject property. There is evidence that a hardship exists on the subject property. It is part of the Ladera Park No. 2 subdivision recorded in 1995, which is a two-lot residential subdivision with both lots fronting towards McMillan Road. This subdivision was also approved under the Legacy Zoning Code and allowed for the construction of 7-foot wide attached sidewalks. The subdivision is really the only area along the southern side of McMillan Road that's oriented in this way, with single-family lots being accessed from McMillan Road. Most of the surrounding subdivisions contain non-buildable common lots acting as landscape buffers adjacent to McMillan Road, or are oriented towards the south away from it with the rears of the property towards McMillan Road, meaning the potential for redevelopment in a manner that would require the installation of detached sidewalks along McMillan Road is unlikely. This is because if similar development applications were submitted, these frontage improvements would be required along the local roads, which these parcels are accessed from, rather than the arterial, which they're oriented away from. Shown here is a map of McMillan Road, with red showing where the installation of detached sidewalks may create nonconformities with the existing structures due to the way that the installation of detached sidewalks changes the point from which front setbacks are measured from, in that the back of the future detached sidewalk is where it's measured from rather than the property line. You'll notice these parcels abutting McMillan Road are either oriented away from it or are skinny non-buildable landscape buffer common lots, or contain structures that would become non-conforming with this installation. All of these factors limit the potential for redevelopment in a manner that would require detached sidewalks to be installed along McMillan Road. Shown here are the findings for approval for variances. As described within the project report, all of these findings have been met. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the variance request, and I will stand for any questions.
I do have a few, Mr. Dennis. Can you zoom in on something that shows the neighborhood? I think it was the first one where it shows that one. So do those subdivisions have landscape lots? It looks like that's just all right of way.
Ms. Canning, yes. I have a backup slide here that kind of zooms in on each one of these. If you look closely, you can see kind of three things going on with these parcels that are adjacent to McMillan Road. They're either very short in a north-south orientation, landscape buffers, or they are accessed from a local road interior, like if you're able to see my mouse, kind of these guys right here all have the landscape buffer, skinny landscape buffer, but they're accessed from a local road that's interior
Right.
to the neighborhood. And then some other examples over here where kind of on the right side of the screen here, not a landscape buffer, but the frontages of these lots are facing towards the south. So, you know, if a similar application were to come through, the frontage improvements would be required on these local roads rather than the arterial. That's pretty consistent through down McMillan Road.
What provision of code would allow you to not ask for the separated sidewalk if that property redeveloped? You're saying you would only ask for it. They're double fronted lots. They're prohibited from accessing the arterial. But I don't believe there's any code that would allow you to waive that requirement other than a variance.
So, Ms. Canning, when a development application comes in through an existing lot like this, those frontage improvements are only required on the front of the parcel. So the whichever orientation the parcel is oriented, obviously, would be considered the front of the parcel. So the detached sidewalks, you know, a similar application coming in on one of these residential lots would require that the installation of detached sidewalks along the front property line, which
can you bring
these
up
two parcels are one of the only few that front onto McMillan Road.
Can you bring up the R1C standards where it talks about the sidewalk requirement?
Okay, thanks. I'll pull it up to you.
Ms. Canning, is this the section you're looking for here? It's within the R1C
Streetscape standards, yes. It's up. Oh, yeah, when you get to R1C, there you go.
So Ms. Kenny, you can see here, section D1 and D2 state that each frontage on a local road or each frontage on a collector or arterial street. So basically, the point that I was trying to make is a similar development application would require these street improvements only on the front of these parcels. So part of the hardship is that the Ladera Park number 2 subdivision is oriented in a way that first wouldn't be allowed within the modern zoning code, which is obviously the code that the modification was submitted under. So it would have already been improved with a detached sidewalk if it was submitted under or required to provide a detached sidewalk if it was fronting onto McMillan.
Okay. That's interesting. I'd never thought about it that way. Now, can you go back to your view of just the site and the few neighboring properties? And what's just to the west? That other Ladera Park lot, what's on that? Just a house?
Ms. Canning, west of this, so Ladera Park is the highlighted parcel is one of the 2 lots within Ladera Park. Surrounding that to its east and its west, basically in a U shape, is Ladera Park number 1. Those houses are oriented towards us with the sides towards McMillan. They're accessed from a local road.
Understood.
West of that is, I believe that's a single family residential house. And then there's another, I'm not sure what's going on this parcel. But these 2 would likely be able to accommodate a detached sidewalk, but it's very few of those on McMillan that could accommodate a detached sidewalk without creating nonconformities due to where the existing structures are located.
Okay. Is PUD 2319 still valid?
Ms. Canning, yes, it is.
And could the PUD setbacks be lessened to minimize the impact of the detached sidewalk if that's what they have to do?
So Ms. Canning, I prepared a diagram showing how the setbacks would change with the modern zoning code. So there's 4 colors here. The green one would represent the required landscape buffer. The yellow would be the required 10-foot sidewalk. The red dashed line is where the property line is located currently. So that's where the front setback is measured from in the legacy zoning code. The red, below that, the red solid line is where the front setback, 15-foot front setback, is located under the legacy code and how the PUD 2319 was approved. The modern zoning code relocates the point from which front setbacks are measured to the back of the future detached sidewalk. So the blue dash line represents the location of where the 15-foot setback would start from. And then the blue solid line shows the modern zoning code front setback if detached sidewalks were required. And you can see that it's bisecting that proposed duplex there.
But could the PUD modification allow for a much reduced setback?
Ms. Cannon, thank you for clarifying. So PUDs don't act in a similar manner that they used to. PUDs used to allow, you're on the right track, they used to allow reduced setbacks. My understanding is that those no longer exist in the modern zoning code and that the nature of PUDs have changed. So to answer your question, my understanding is that the PUD 2319, since it's approved and under a zoning code that's no longer in action, that it would not extend reduced setbacks. And then further than that, reduced setbacks were only allowed for interior setbacks, not exterior, around the perimeter of the site. So this being along the perimeter, even under the legacy zoning code, it wouldn't have.
Okay, so the answer is no. Okay, just clarifying. And then does the sidewalk have to jog at right angles as depicted in the staff report, or could it kind of organically flow out and then flow back to the 7-foot attached?
Ms. Canning, I think kind of depending on I've seen both happen. I think in this case, it would probably have to be more of a kind of a sharp turn into there, just because of the limited street frontage. The kind of it would take some frontage to at say like a 45-degree angle would at that point kind of be well into the site before. So I've seen them go both ways, but I would assume that this would have to be closer to a 90-degree angle to get that full separation and accommodate those street trees.
Okay. I don't have any more questions for you right now. All right. Now we can hear from the applicant.
We
have an applicant.
Yep. Looks like the applicant, Jeff, is online. Jeff, if you want to unmute, should be at the bottom left of your screen.
Got it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just to kind of summarize,
Can you please state your name and
yes. Name is Jeff
address for the record?
3426 South Sugarloaf Place in Eagle, Idaho. So the application we put in is to make a minor modification to the PUD to allow 2 duplex units instead of the 2 single families and a duplex unit, or a single family with 2 single with the duplex. Reason was we can get more garage space and allow 2-car garages for each unit, which really helps the usability of the people that are living in the units. As we submitted, I think a month after we had approval, but the changes came to this modern code right in that interim. The sidewalk that runs, all the way, I think almost to Maple Grove along McMillan on both sides is a 2-foot separation from the curb, and then a 5-foot sidewalk. This would be like one jog that was just stuck in the middle of these, several miles of sidewalk. The other concern kind of was that there's several schools in the area, and the kids, even though there's a bike lane, the kids tend to ride their bikes on the sidewalk. And in coming to our location, there's fences on both sides. And so you'd be making this jog right around the edge of a fence almost, and kind of not a good viewing location. And I don't know if it'd be a safety issue, but it's possible that there could be some safety implications for that. Otherwise, basically the layout and everything stayed pretty much the same from the previous approved PUD.
Do you have anything further, Mr. Reed?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone representing the neighborhood association here tonight? Seeing no hands, we will go to any of the public. Is there anyone sitting in the audience that would like to testify tonight? Again, we have no hands, and there is no one on the sign-up sheet for this one.
And Ms. Canning, I just had a Stephen Jalbert raise his hands online,
Okay.
so let's
Great.
allow him to talk. 1 second. Stephen, if you unmute, you should be able to speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So my name is Stephen Jalbert. I live at 2912 Pleasanton, right directly across Pleasanton from the proposed unit.
Stephen,
Yes.
I apologize. This is a hearing for an item on McMillan Avenue. I think the Pleasanton one will be just a little bit further down.
Oh, okay.
the
Sorry.
agenda.
Thank you.
Just hang tight.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Anyone else virtually for this application? All right. I did have a question for Mr. Reed. if you wouldn't mind. Do you know what is happening on the property immediately west of this?
There's a single family home there. And I do know the people that live there. I've been in communication with them for years. As far as I know, they don't plan on moving at any time, or making any changes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I guess, Mr. Reed, you'd have the opportunity to rebut any of the conversations that's gone on, but there hasn't been any, but I will give you one more chance to say anything that you'd like to.
No, hopefully I have some things up enough for you to understand.
I do.
Thank you.
And I empathize. I understand that the application of this sidewalk requirement is onerous. It is in so many places in the modern zoning code that it's obvious it was intended to be implemented piece by piece, even where it didn't make sense. And I think that's what we've got today. I don't think it qualifies as a variance. Fortunately, you still have a valid PUD and you can move forward with that, but I do not find that it meets the requirements for a variance. There's not a hardship. The existence of an approved PUD clarifies that. It is a special grant or right of privilege. We've got lots of folks here today wanting to waive sidewalk requirements in similar situations. And this is not one that qualifies in my mind as deserving of a variance. So I'm going to go ahead and I think for now I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to table this until next week for findings. I'd like to work with staff on findings, and then we will make a decision then. I guess I haven't made a decision exactly. This one confuses me. I do want to work on findings. So we're just going to table it for now and bring it up at our next hearing. All right.
And Ms. Canning, just to clarify, would you like to defer this one to the next hearing to bring back, or would you just like to make a decision off the dais and bring back revised findings that we would then share with the applicant?
I guess I would like to defer it. The discussion about the frontage requirements kind of surprised me, so I would like to just defer it until the March hearing.
Okay. And just for the record, that'll be the March 26th hearing.
Yes.
Okay. And just before we move on, I would like to confirm with the applicant that date would work for him. Jeff, are you still online?
Yes, that day would work.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to move on now to the next application. Thank you, Mr. Dennis. And it is CVA 2411. Ms. Mbappe? He's a little taller than you are. Go ahead.
Good evening, Ms. Canning. CVA 24-00011, the applicant and staff have requested the item to be deferred to the next hearing due to ACHG comments that were submitted today.
Is there anyone in the audience here to testify today that cannot come back March 26th to testify on this item? Seeing no hands raised, we will defer this item to March 26th, 2025. All right, now moving on again to CVA 2422.
Good afternoon again, Ms. Canning. The item before you is CVA 24-0002, a variance to allow a detached accessory structure to be larger than the primary structure on 0.14 acre lot at 4405 West Irvin Street, abutting an alley in an R1C residential traditional zone. The subject property is comprised of a single-family residence facing Irvin Street and a detached ADU and garage to the rear. There is an undue hardship with the property that justifies the granting of the variance. The subject property is comprised of an 868 square foot primary structure, an 864 square foot detached garage, and a 654 square foot ADU. The letter of explanation and photos in your packet indicate that the house was built in 1941 without a proper foundation, which has caused the structure to be unsafe and inhabitable, which is why there's a need to demolish the house in order to build a safer house. The detached garage is larger than the primary, is larger than the ADU, and the removal of the single-family residence will create nonconformity on the site, therefore preventing the current house from being demolished. The applicant cannot attach the existing ADU to the garage, as the new structure will create nonconformities on the site. At 1,518 square foot, a combined ADU and garage will be unable to comply with the interior side and rear setback, since the existing garage utilizes the permitted encroachment and it's located 2 feet into the interior side setback and 9 feet into the rear setback. As outlined in your project report, there is an undue hardship with the property and the request meets all approval criteria for a variance. Therefore, the planning team recommends approval of the variance request, and I'll stand for any questions you may have.
I have none for you right now. Thank you. Would the applicant like to come up and speak? Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Addie Whites at 4405 West Irvin Street. Thanks, Danielle, too. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my plans for the property and then the hardship and why I'm seeking a variance. My plan for the property, I bought it in 2021, and it was in pretty bad condition. It took me like a year just to kind of clean it up. The existing garage in the back is in pretty good condition. The house in the front is in pretty bad condition. Did you see the photos submitted?
I did.
Gotcha. Yeah. So
It's pretty bad.
Yeah. The main issue is that it was built on cinder blocks originally. And so part of it is lifted off of those over the years. And I don't think it's been maintained really in the last 30 years. So right now it's just kind of boarded up. My plan for the property is to replace that house with a larger family house. And then rent out the ADU. But I think if I did it all at once, it would have been code compliant. But I'm sort of doing it in a reverse process just because I had the budget to build the smaller ADU first. But my plan is to live in either the ADU or the main house and rent the other one out. But the primary house right now is pretty unlivable. And I'm worried a little like about like kids getting into there in the neighborhood. All of my neighbors would like it to be gone. And just that it's gonna like fall down sometime. So I'd rather intentionally take it down. My plan is eventually to replace it with a larger family home. In talking to planning and zoning, I think one of the hard things for them to do is I have like no guarantee that I'm gonna build that larger home. And I think my argument to that is even without that primary residence, it would be a better use of the land to have it be demolished, and that eventually to build that house, the old house will need to be demolished eventually. And even if I like were to sell the property, which I don't have any intention to do, it would be more valuable as a property without that abandoned home on the property.
Do you, are you done?
Yeah.
May I ask you
Yes.
some questions?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Any thoughts on when you might pull a building permit for the main home?
Yeah, probably within the next like 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years. Okay. And we can condition a variance. Okay. What if I said you needed to submit for a building permit within 3 years? Do you think you could get organized and do that?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. And then, because this is it's an interesting request for a variance. It's really a request for time.
Mhm.
And given that they're existing structures, I can see that there is some hardship here, but it's just time, which is not really one of the dimensional standards that the code anticipates ever. Some building codes will let you live in a house while you work on another house, but it's not common in a city. It's more common in a county. So I think we can find something that will work there if you think 3 years is enough. Okay. Anything else you want to add?
Thank you.
Anything else from staff?
No.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Oh,
Yes.
I'm not going to close the public hearing. Is there anyone from the neighborhood association here to testify? Is there anyone from the public here to testify? Okay, seeing no hands raised, now I will close the public hearing. And no one online? No one online. I move to approve this variance with 2 conditions. One is that the applicant submit for a building permit within 3 years. And the second is that she completes construction within 2 years of receiving the approved building permit. Now, staff will not follow these. It's entirely up to you to keep track of that timeline, because this will be an unusual time consideration for them. They're used to following it on other items. This they will not probably have on their radar. So it is entirely up to you. If you don't meet those timelines, you don't have a variance. And so then you're looking at either building immediately or tearing down the ADU or tearing down the garage, I guess is what it is really. If you don't have a variance, you got to tear down your garage.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So with that requirement to build in 3 years, does the ADU still become the primary, or can it still be classified as an accessory structure? I'm just worried that in 3 years, when I apply for the building permit, will I also need to reclassify the ADU as an ADU?
No, I think this variance application was really clear that you just wanted to live in the ADU until you could get the main house built.
Perfect. Thank you.
This staff is agreeing and nodding in agreement, so I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Now we will move on to CVA 2436 for Bonnie Crump at 1708 North 19th Street. Ms. Lockhorn.
Good afternoon, Ms. Canning. The item before you is a variance to encroach into the required rear setback on a 0.14 acre lot in the R1C HDO zone located at 1708 North 19th Street. The property contains a single-family home with a detached accessory structure in the rear. The subject of the variance is the 60 square foot addition of the accessory structure. The detached accessory structure in the rear of the property is not a parking structure and requires a 9-foot rear setback. However, the 60 square foot addition is located 4 feet from the rear property line, resulting in a 5-foot encroachment. Accessory structures are allowed to encroach into the rear setback under specific circumstances. The exact built date of the accessory structure is unknown. It appears to be an imagery from 1964, predating the zoning code, and is considered legally non-conforming. This variance is one step in a multi-step process to bring the site into compliance. In 2008, a certificate of appropriateness approved the 60 square foot addition. Condition 1A of the 2008 approval required a variance to be applied and granted for the 5-foot rear setback encroachment. Additionally, condition 1B explicitly stated the certificate of appropriateness did not approve an ADU as part of the historic review. Staff reviewed permit history for the site and found in 2009 a variance was submitted but later withdrawn. Despite this, a building permit was submitted and approved. A certificate of occupancy would not have been granted for a residential detached accessory structure, as this was not a dwelling unit at time of permitting. Certificate of appropriatenesses are valid for a period of 24 months. Since no variance was obtained within those 24 months, the entitlement is considered null. The applicant would like to permit the structure for an ADU. A variance is needed for the 60 square foot addition since it is within the setback. As the accessory structure is built along the rear property line, any addition onto the structure would require a variance given the nature and location of the structure. Granting this variance will not create any new encroachments that do not already exist on the property, as the rear and side setbacks have encroached prior to this addition and no further expansion is proposed. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval for the variance. I will stand for any questions.
Ms. Lockhorn, do we know when what date they withdrew the variance?
When I looked over so we since have gotten a new permitting system with the city, so some of the documents are missing, but I did find a note on one of the documents on that variance that said we refunded it. I think it was February 5th, 2009.
So they submitted in 2008, correct?
For the certificate of appropriateness.
So can you go back to the
Mhm.
bulleted item there? So they submitted November 26, 2008 for the variance, right? No, that's the certificate of appropriateness.
Yes, the historic approval.
Oh, so they submitted in January 2009 and you think it was withdrawn in February 2009?
Correct.
But the building permit was issued submitted October 1st and issued December 24th. Okay. And was there a C of O issued for the addition?
Ms. Canning, since this was not permitted as an accessory dwelling unit or a dwelling unit, no certificate of occupancy was needed with the building department since it was just an art studio accessory structure. No
Okay.
occupancy was needed.
And then your staff report mentions a number of code violations. Can you fill in perhaps a little more detail on how those were resolved?
Yes, Ms. Canning, I do have a slide with the code complaints. In 2013, it appears that a mailbox was installed for 1708 half. Based on, the property in our GIS system, no address was provided for that site. You have to go through our addressing with the city to receive another address. And in 2013, I don't know that we were doing halves at that time. And then same code complaint was filed in 2014. Post office was receiving mail for 1708 half. Wasn't a valid address per city records. They were unable to get in contact with the owner, and so the case was closed. In 2020, there was a code complaint about the detached structure being converted into an ADU without a permit. The stove was removed from the structure. Typically for an ADU, at least in 2020, to be considered an ADU, a full kitchen was kind of where that line was drawn. So the property owner did remove the stove, sent in photos
Okay.
complying.
Thank you. All right, we're ready to hear from the applicant. Please come up and state your name. Oh, I believe you're online. Please
Yep, Ms.
state your
Krupp
name.
is online and I just promoted her to a panelist. So Ms. Krupp, if you accept that, there we go. And then just unmute on the bottom left. We should be able to hear you.
Yes, I'm Bonnie Krupp.
Perfect. We can hear you.
I unmuted it.
Yes, Ms. Krupp,
hear
we can
me?
hear you if you just want to state your name
Okay.
and address for the record and fill us in on what you'd like to say. Thank you.
Okay, there was a lot of confusion when this was going on. I didn't even realize that some of the construction permit what needed to have a variance and why it was withdrawn. I have no idea. Maybe they decided at the time they didn't need it. I don't know. But I wasn't here for all of it. The contractor took care of almost all of it at the time. And I was in and out. So as far as I know, yeah, and I would like to convert it to an ADU. I did live there part-time for a while, but I was unable to continue due to the fact my mother became ill and I had to return to California.
Is that all you'd like to add, Ms. Krupp? Ms. Krupp, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. I mean,
Okay.
it's,
Do you-
I don't mind finishing this up, but I would certainly like to, everything should be cleared up and it's in good condition. As far as I understand, it's better than most ADUs if it were going to be used for an ADU. Anyway, it's in a nice area and was suitable for an elder, a person who needs cheap housing and has is agreeable to, well, it has a parking spot so they can park. All I can say is that, it was just a confusing mixture, and I didn't handle the permits. I simply paid the bills on it.
All right. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So you've owned the property this entire time, but you've not lived here or
I did
you're-
live there for a while. Yes.
Did you live there during 2008, 2009?
No. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, I did for 6 months.
Okay. So you're back and forth and
No,
you've had
no, I live
tenants?
here in Boise all the time.
Okay. Oh, you just weren't on this particular
Right.
property. Okay, I understand now. And you've had renters
Yes, there were people who lived there and they did pay
And-
some rent.
and you were aware that your initial approval specifically said that it wasn't to be rented?
Truthfully don't remember that at that point. No.
Okay. And your contractor was in charge of the variance and the building permit?
Yes, I didn't have anything to do with any of it, so I have no idea why the variance didn't go through.
It seems unusual, especially since the certificate of appropriateness required the variance, that it would be withdrawn without them letting you know.
I don't think it's that unusual for contractors to do things as long as they can build it and collect, and collect the money.
All right, I think I'll open it up to the rest of the public. Is there anyone representing the neighborhood association? I see no hands. Is there anyone in the public hearing wishing to testify on this project? Again, I see no one. And is there anyone online that would like to testify? Mr. Holmes is shaking his head no. Is Ms. Krupp, is there anything else you'd like to add to the record as far as a rebuttal?
No, it's a good quality remodel on the inside. It's cleaned up, has, it's up to date, has electrical is all up to code, has had a new electrical box. And the number 1708.5 wasn't given by me. That came from Idaho Power.
Okay, but it was people you were renting to, even though your approval said you couldn't rent.
It doesn't really say it can't rent. It said I was supposed to use it as a studio.
It specifically says you cannot use it as an accessory dwelling unit. Okay. I forgot to ask staff one thing. Why could the addition not have been on it? Can you bring up the site plan for me? Yeah. And is, okay, north is oriented that way. Why could the addition not have been on the west side of that accessory structure rather than the north side of that accessory structure?
Ms. Canning? As this
Because it
was,
sits right on the edge of the property in the corner. Literally.
West would be between the accessory structure and your home.
And Ms. Canning, would you like Ms. Krupp or staff to answer?
Is there a
West, this is West Bella and
Ms. Krupp, let me finish with staff and then I'll circle back with you if you don't mind. Ms. Lockhorn, is there a code reason why that addition could not have been on the west side or could not now be on the west side of that accessory structure? How wide is the accessory structure?
I can jump in here. Ms. Canning, I think we would probably have to process that as an expansion of a legal non-conforming structure if it would have been on the west side, which has its own set of findings that we'd have to review and look at. I think on the fly, that's a difficult question to answer, though.
Because I suspect the answer is it still doesn't meet the 12-foot or the 9-foot setback, perhaps.
It could be that case, yeah.
Okay. And now, Ms. Krupp, can you answer why you weren't able to build on the west side of the structure?
it runs right up to the fence, what would fence of the next property, which is a fourplex there. And it also, the sewer line, to connect to the sewer line, it runs on that side, that the expansion was put. That's part of it. There's no sewer line over on the other side. I would have been, well, it would have been weird to have to dig everything around to try and get to a sewer line.
Ms. Krupp, the picture I'm looking at, west would be between your accessory structure and the house, not between your accessory structure and the fence. So you'd be coming.
No, West Bella, that is North 19th where the house sits on. North 19th.
Correct?
Yeah, North 19th. So you're looking at West Bella. That's the west side where the fence is. The east side is where the structure and the 2 parking spots and the whatchamacallit, the storage was put.
Do we have the north arrow incorrectly?
Ms. Canning, the north arrow is correct.
Okay. So
I can pull up a aerial, possibly.
so your parking is on the north side of your property. I'm asking about the west side of the accessory structure. Can you see the area that Ms. Lockhorn is circling with her mouse?
Yes, I see it.
Okay. Why is there something that prevents adding on to the structure there?
Yes, because the sewer line runs right behind where between where we put the parking and the extension.
Okay.
So to connect to the sewer line, it had to be
All
on
right,
that
we got
side.
there. Yay. Okay. Thank you. Oh man. So
The thing about this is that the neighborhood on my side has all old homes, except for the very end one. But so the three of them, none of them would meet the variance. I think there's a photo in the packet that shows how you go down the street. It's only the newer ones that were set back and had garages put in. So it's not unusual to find that. Yeah, and the fact the next one, I don't know if it's an ADU, but I think two of them are either ADUs or maybe not ADUs. I have no idea.
okay, I'm gonna cut you off because I kind of already have ended that part of the providing input. But thank you for answering my questions. It took us a while to get there, but I appreciate that, and it's made a difference. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to go ahead and approve this application. I would like the findings beefed up a little bit on the hardship. Can you please mention that the existence of the sewer line on that west elevation that prevents any additions there? And also, can you emphasize the certificate of appropriateness that found in favor of it as well in the findings? If they may already be there, but if you could add that to the findings, I would appreciate it. Maybe under the special right of privilege section. And with that, we'll if you could bring those back to me or send those to me for my approval, I'd appreciate that. All right. We will move on to CZC 2498 on 2921 West Pleasanton Avenue. Nope. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. That's not it. It's CZC 2498. Don't mind me. Something's going on. I don't know what it is. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Ms. Canning. The item before you is an appeal of the planning director's approval of a triplex on 0.14 acres located at 2921 West Pleasanton Avenue in an R2 zone. The proposed development is comprised of 3 detached units, each with an attached 2-car garage. While the development does not precisely meet the definition of any use that is listed in the zoning ordinance, code does grant the planning director discretion to determine the classification of any new or unlisted form of land use after considering the use's nature, intensity, and anticipated impacts. The director found a triplex to be the most appropriate classification for the proposed use based on the number and the size of the units proposed. A triplex is an allowed use in the R2 zone subject to administrative review to ensure compliance with the use-specific standards of the development code. On January 3rd, 2025, the planning director approved a zoning certificate for the construction of a triplex on the subject property. The project layout and building elevations are shown on this slide. On January 13th, the approval of CZC 24-98 was appealed by a neighbor of the project. The grounds for appeal are detailed in your packet and summarized on this slide. The appellant's memo, which is included in your packet, describes concerns related to the density of the project and the height, architectural style, and color palette of the proposed buildings. The appellant also asserts that the amount of off-street parking provided by the project will not be sufficient to accommodate the needs of the future residents and will lead to vehicles parking on the streets in front of neighboring homes. Additionally, the appeal expresses concern regarding privacy impacts on the neighboring properties due to the placement of windows and balconies. However, the proposed project does comply with the allowed density, building height, and off-street parking requirements of code as summarized in the table on this slide. As detailed in the administrative approval letter dated January 3rd, which is included in your packet, the planning director also found the project to be in compliance with the approval criteria for a triplex. These standards include specific building design requirements, but do not require new developments to utilize the same architectural style, building materials, or color palette as existing structures on neighboring properties. Additionally, code requires a minimum of 1 off-street parking space to be provided for each triplex unit containing 3 or fewer bedrooms. Each unit within this development contains 3 bedrooms and an attached 2-car garage, thereby providing double the minimum amount of off-street parking which is required by code. The specific design standards for triplexes require balconies to be located in areas that will cause minimal interference with the privacy of neighboring properties. A context map showing the proposed balcony locations is shown on this slide. The planning director found the proposed balconies to be located in compliance with code, as the orientation of balconies towards public rights-of-way provides increased separation from neighboring properties, thereby minimizing privacy impacts. Furthermore, the standards of the development code do not place any restrictions on the size or placement of 2nd or 3rd story windows, and code does not grant the director discretion to place additional design restrictions beyond these specific design standards that are required by code on projects that are administratively allowed. In conclusion, the planning team finds that the grounds submitted by the appellant do not demonstrate an error in the director's approval of CZC 24-98 and recommends that the appeal be denied. And I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Ms. Martinson, can you bring up section 110301.5? To your knowledge, did the planning director consider provision A in making their determination that this was a triplex?
Ms. Canning, yes, the planning director did consider this to be a single residential use, as is seen with a cottage village or other uses such as multifamily residential. There can be a single use that's within multiple structures. So the planning director didn't find this to be multiple uses, just a single use in multiple structures.
Thank you, Ms. Mortensen. We'll now hear from the appellant. Tatiana, you're going to have to help me with your last name. Come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Excuse me. My name is Tatiana Wertischen, 3008, excuse me, West Madison Ave, Boise, Idaho, 83702. Sorry, I've been sick. I'm no longer contagious, but it's just hard for me to talk. So I live diagonally across from the proposed triplex. I would be seeing this every day when this came up. I saw it and thought that this is just too much for our quaint little residential neighborhood that was established as early back as 1905 as single family homes. There is a section that I live in that is duplexes, but everything is like 2 stories. It's very mid-century look and feel. This is a very modern look and feel. It's going to increase density and really start to change the neighborhood into a high density housing situation. And that is not our neighborhood.
Do you have any other details you'd like to provide?
I mean, I don't want to insult your intelligence. My concerns were in the paper that I wrote, that I submitted. It's just with the height, Unit C that overlooks It does overlook a right of way, which is an alleyway, but that is high enough. It has an open exposed side that the neighbor directly to the south, they are going to lose all of their privacy. And that is a balcony. You could always put up a wall, do something or whatever. And I understand the need for windows. I like them myself too. But some of the windows on the proposed construction are going to be completely overlooking the neighbor to the east. And that is going to remove all of their privacy. So there's the privacy concerns. I've lived in rentals myself. I am a real estate investor, and I understand the nature of how people utilize their garages. The way that these units are set up, to me, it looked very much more like a rental roommate situation than a family, just because of the equal nature of all of the bedrooms. And when I've had roommates, nobody ever parks in the garage. And even with those of us who own our own homes in family situations, how many people park in their garages versus having all of their stuff in the garages? And with the nature of where this is located, 1 block away from Quinn's Pond, people's garages in that area are full of the toys to go play in Quinn's Pond. And so that is, to me, says that there's going to be definitely not 2 cars parking in the garage, at best maybe 1. And while I understand that street parking is for all, my concern is that there will not be enough street parking immediately adjacent to this unit, that parking will start to spill over into other areas. And if this unit is allowed, it will set a precedence. And then within a few years, we could have parking issues in that whole area. Where the duplexes are further, just across 30th Street on Pleasanton Ave, even though all of those duplexes have 2-car garages, after work, that street is pretty full of parking. So to me, that is a really good indication of what is going to start to happen. And if we continue to build at a density that does not match our street frontage and a density that does not match the original density of this quaint neighborhood, then eventually we will find ourselves in a situation where we would have parking issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the neighborhood association?
Actually, Ms. Canning, in this case, since it's an appeal, we'll have the applicant. I have a Kevin Schalk online. If you want to unmute Kevin, you should be able to speak.
Hello, this is Kevin here, the architect, and James Glancy is also here with the architect.
So this James Glancy, and I'll speak for the applicant on this project. So I'm with Glancy Rockwell Architects, and we designed this project. I just want to kind of go through the design process we went with. During the design development, we presented the owner with options building on Pleasanton with the new ordinance that came out. So we had different heights, parking requirements, and setbacks. And reviewing those, they asked for rentals here. And we showed that you could put a maximum of 6 units on the site, which would only require 1 space. We could get 1.5 spaces per unit, but it would have been in an enclosed garage beneath the whole thing. So it would have been a single massive building. Another option was building a 4-plex, and it only would allow 2 little like 1 3/4 spaces. And then we presented a triplex option, which would allow 2-car garages for each unit. The owner was looking for rentals that would be attractive to single families, so asked that we prioritize the following. He wanted 3-bedroom, single family style units, 2-car garages, enclosed yard space for the families, and they were looking for rooftop balconies so that they could have views to the mountains and back to Quinn's Pond. To comply with the owner's desire, we went the triplex direction to what we evolved into today. In lieu of a triplex, we wanted to create the individual single-family style residence. So we broke the buildings into 3 individual buildings rather than one massive structure. We thought that might be a little more appropriate to the neighborhood. And in lieu of a rooftop balcony that the owner requested, which would have had a flat roof and been very modern, we recommended having a 3rd-story balcony, which would be smaller, and we added hip roofs, which would be more appropriate for the pitched roofs for residential neighborhood. The balconies are oriented intentionally to create privacy for the tenants and the neighbors. They're on the public street. There's a small section of the balcony that looks south across the alley, but the other 2 are totally on public street and should be, and well, actually look over single-story homes, but probably not the 2-story homes adjacent. Another thing we went to is a special effort to retain the trees. The city wanted us to put in a detached sidewalk, which would have had us removing the mature evergreens along the street. Along with support of ACHD and the city's parks, we made a special request to have that waived, which you just went through previously, if you're well aware that detached sidewalks are being pushed. And so the city accepted our request and we were able to retain, installing a new sidewalk and a wider sidewalk, but we were able to retain the 2 large spruce trees and the maple tree on the north. I should point out these trees are probably taller or as tall or taller than the units we're building, and will screen a lot of these balconies and concerns that neighbors are bringing up. So with the new code, I think we had a learning curve, and we took numerous modifications on this design and approval process. We're full agreement with the staff report. We feel fully meets the code, and there's not a basis for this appeal to be accepted. So we would like to thank the staff for their efforts and guidance through this process, and believe this will end up being a wonderful, high quality addition to the neighborhood. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have. Did you hear me?
Yeah.
Officially, I don't know what the,
Thank you, sir.
yeah,
I have to back up for a moment.
Okay.
Ms. Wertian has indicated that she's a representative for the neighborhood meeting, but you would have to be the official representative for the neighborhood.
I guess I am by default, because I'm leading this. We have no official organization or
Then the answer to my question is probably no, but
Okay.
you're all right. You'll get a chance to speak again, so don't worry about that. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak on this matter?
Ms. Canning, I have Stephen Gelbert online that I can unmute now.
Thank you.
Hello,
Stephen. Yep.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please go
Okay.
ahead with your name and address for the record.
Yes. My name is Stephen Jalbert. I live at 2912 Pleasanton, which is directly across the street from the proposed development. My main concern is with the street parking. We already have about 10 cars that regularly park near this intersection. And with the setbacks, if you notice on the design plan, there's no parking signs placed. I think it's like 15 feet from the corner to ensure clear lines of sight at the intersection. And even now, those already go ignored. So I know that if you put more cars in there, they're going to be parking there. It's already a high pedestrian intersection. You have kids going to school at Whittier, probably 20 to 30 children who go right down 30th Street across Pleasanton there. So it's the safety and the sight lines of that intersection need to be kept open so that the kids can cross safely, and all the strollers and bikes and dogs that are going down Pleasanton to the park have a safe way to cross. I wouldn't mind seeing a four-way stop at this intersection because it's already pretty busy and there's a lot of pedestrian traffic. But my main concern is that when you considered the off-street parking, did you consider those 15-foot setbacks from the corner where you're not allowed to park on both sides of the street?
Thank you, sir. Did you have additional testimony?
No, it's mostly, like I said, about the street parking.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Holmes, is there anybody else online?
Just have one person online. Jessica Harrison, are you here to speak on this item? And if you are, can you virtually raise your hand? Guess not. I think that's everybody, Ms. Canning.
Thank you. Ms. Wertischen, got that right this time. If you'd like to say anything as a rebuttal, you may.
While I understand that this design as proposed does not violate any of the requirements, I just want to state that as a real estate investor myself, this is somebody's investment property. They do not live in the neighborhood. They do not have pride of ownership here, and it is going to transfer our neighborhood, start to change it in a very unappealing way to those of us who not only live there, but own our own homes and have an interest there. So, and one of the things I forgot to say is that the color scheme, yes, it may be neutral, but it is very horrendous, dark, nasty colors, but quite honestly remind me of what I would see in a baby's diaper. I don't want to have to look at that for however long I choose to remain living in my own home.
Okay.
So at the very least, can we go to, a more, beige, off-white, that sort of color palette? So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Mortensen, would you bring up the definition of triplex again?
Ms. Canning, I think if we're doing rebuttals, we'll probably let the applicant also rebut
Keep
one
on
more
forgetting
time
about
too.
the applicant.
Yep.
I'm sorry. We'll now hear from the applicant for a rebuttal.
Yeah, this is James again. As far as the on-street parking, we haven't addressed that. There is some restrictions, and I noticed that it is limited parking for, it doesn't say non-residents, but the staff report refers to the parking restrictions as on-street parking by non-residents is restricted to 1 hour limits. So there is additional parking there in front. And the way we have this design, there's one narrow curb cut coming into the site. So versus a typical house, even the fourplexes or duplexes across the street, they have 30-foot wide driveways going into them that take all the parking on the street parking away, where we have just a narrow driveway going in so that we retain the street parking. So I know it's an impact to the neighborhood. And as far as the triplex goes, I think our solution, having them separated, reduce the mass so that it versus having them all attached as one large building. So I think we accomplished the triplex with a little bit different style. Colors it's basically neutral. We had some highlight panels. Maybe they didn't show up very well. The surrounding homes, a lot of them are just plain gray, pretty boring. We're not that outlandish, and they're actually very high quality wood panels on these homes. The homeowners or the owners of this property are looking for a very nice, high quality product for the neighborhood. And I don't think it'll lower anybody's home value. I think it'll increase it if nothing else. That's all I have to say, unless there's a question.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I will now close the hearing and render a decision. I've asked staff to bring up the definition of dwelling triplex, and I'm going to read it into the record. It's a single building on a single lot containing 3 dwellings units under one roof, each of which is designed for use and occupancy by one household. I've been instructed that when it comes to an appeal, I am not held to just the items that are brought up by the appellant. And in this case, I do not find that this is a triplex project. This is 3 homes on one lot. At best, it might be a cottage village, but I do not find it to be a triplex. And for that reason, I'm going to uphold the appeal. Do I need to we haven't done one of these. Not sure how to do the findings. Do we need to
Scanning probably makes sense. You can do the off the dais and send them in to us, and we can include those with the final action letter.
Okay, I will do that. So with that, I believe we are at the end of our agenda, and we will adjourn. Thank you.